Lovecraft AI, The Shadow Below Carrion Hill.
The Shadow Below Carrion Hill. In the summer of 1913, I was called to the decaying town of Carrion Hill by a curious letter from my old acquaintance, Professor Harold Drexler. The professor, once a respected antiquarian and scholar of obscure myths, had fallen into disrepute for his obsessive pursuit of pre-human civilizations and their supposed remnants. The letter spoke of an ancient artifact unearthed during a recent storm that had dislodged a section of the cliffs outside town. It begged for my immediate presence, claiming that the artifact's nature defied all conventional understanding. I arrived to find Carrion Hill as bleak and forlorn as I had imagined, a place forgotten by time, its cobblestone streets hemmed in by leaning, decrepit houses. The air was heavy with dampness, and the gray skies seemed to press down on the town with suffocating weight. Drexler's home stood on the edge of town, an imposing, ivy-choked structure whose windows were perpetually dark. Drexler greeted me with an air of feverish urgency, his once imposing frame now gaunt and shadowed. His hands trembled as he led me to his study, where he had placed the object on a pedestal beneath a shroud. He removed the covering with a dramatic flourish, revealing a stone idol unlike anything I had ever seen. It was roughly a foot tall, carved from a dark, veined material that seemed to shimmer faintly in the dim light. The figure depicted was grotesque, a hunched, amorphous being with a mass of writhing tentacles where its face should have been, and limbs that seemed to bend and twist in ways that defied anatomy. The surface of the idol was etched with strange, angular symbols that seemed to shift when viewed from the corner of the eye. "This," Drexler whispered, his voice quivering, "is not the work of human hands. It is older than the hills, older than the sea itself." I laughed nervously, trying to dispel the unease that the object stirred within me. "Surely it's some artifact of an unknown culture, exaggerated by your imagination." But Drexler shook his head vehemently. No, this is a remnant of the old ones, the beings who ruled this world before humanity. It was their servants who created this, a tribute to gods so ancient and vast that our minds can scarcely comprehend their existence." I dismissed his ramblings, attributing them to the eccentricities of a man who had spent too long among dusty tomes and dark rumors. Yet, as I stared at the idol, I could not shake the feeling that something about it was profoundly wrong. That night, I stayed in Drexler's guest room. The house creaked and groaned as though it were alive, and the shadows cast by the flickering oil lamp seemed unnaturally deep. I awoke in the early hours to a sound that I could not place, a low, wet slithering that seemed to emanate from the floor below. My first thought was of Drexler, and I hastened to his study, fearing that he might have taken ill. What I found froze me in my tracks. The idol was glowing faintly, its runes pulsing with an eerie green light. Drexler knelt before it, his hands outstretched, chanting in a guttural, inhuman tongue. The very air in the room seemed to thrum with energy, and a faint, nauseating odor filled my nostrils, like decaying seaweed and stagnant water. "Drexler!" I shouted, but he did not respond. His chant grew louder, the words scraping against my ears like shards of glass. The room grew colder, and I realized with mounting terror that the shadows cast by the idol were moving, stretching, writhing, coalescing into shapes that defied logic. I stumbled backward as a shape began to emerge from the air itself, a vast, amorphous presence that filled the room with its malignancy. Its form was a nightmare of shifting tendrils and glistening voids, its bulk barely contained within the boundaries of this reality. Drexler turned to me then, his eyes wide and glowing with an unnatural light. "They come from the depths," he rasped, "from the void beneath the world. They were never gone. They have always been here, waiting." I fled then, the sound of Drexler's laughter and the hideous wet slithering echoing in my ears. Outside, the town seemed to shudder, as if some vast unseen force was pressing against it. The stars above appeared dim and distorted, their light struggling against an encroaching darkness. I did not stop running until I reached the station, where I boarded the first train out of Carrion Hill. I have not returned, nor have I spoken of that night to anyone but you, dear reader. Yet in the quiet hours of the night, I am plagued by dreams of writhing shadows and vast cyclopean beings stirring beneath the earth. And sometimes, when the wind howls through the trees, I hear it, the wet, slithering sound of something moving just out of sight.
And this was The Shadow Below Carrion Hill. Thank you for listening. This has been Joseph Arthur Roszell. Thank you. Goodbye.